We're looking at, we're kind of getting a solid ground here. Abraham, Isaac, and we're dealing with Jacob here. And what we're looking at is how this family dynamics work here. It's not good that we see so much sin and ungodliness and wickedness in here, but we've got to realize that these people, just like us, are just like us. And if we look around in our families and see what's going on, we're going to see that mankind is depraved, that all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. We're going to see that here. And we're going to see that in one way it's comforting that we can see this stuff here and see how these people were and how they had sin in their lives, but they continued on. And in that same way, when we have sin in our lives, we got to realize we continue on. You know, the devil's going to attack and say, "You got to be kidding! You think you're godly? Look what you just did," or you look at your attitude, or whatever. The devil's going to try to get us so discouraged that we won't do a thing. What we've got to realize that in this flesh, like Paul said, "In me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing." Paul had to fight that flesh every minute of his life. These people weren't real successful at fighting that flesh. They kind of gave in to what's going on here. We as Christians, we have a battle every day. Every day we fight the flesh. Every day we mess up. Now, what does that mean? That means that, is God pleased with that? Absolutely not. God says, "Be ye holy." But He also realizes that we are sinners and we mess up. When we mess up, don't let the devil say it's over now. It's simply over. You're not worth anything anymore. When it's time, if it comes time for God to put you on the shelf, for you to be a castaway, you'll know it. But don't let the devil fool you. You mess up as a Christian, you repent, you confess your sin to the Lord, 1 John 1:9, and you go on. Do not let the devil have victory over you, because we're going to see very clearly here that man by nature, by his human nature, is going to run afoul all the time. And this is what we can see very clearly here in some very, very important people in the Word of God, in biblical history. That would be Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We're going to see how they all have messed up, and yet they realize that they must continue on. And that's kind of the warning there. Just because you mess up, because you sin, I know how the devil plays with my mind. You call yourself a Sunday school teacher. You think, how dare you get up in front of a bunch of people and talk about holiness and righteousness and godliness and the right way to live? How dare you do that? I get that from the devil all the time. And if I was to really recognize the fact that in me that is in my flesh, the devil's 100% right. How dare I get up here and teach? But yet, by God's grace, through the blood of Jesus and the forgiveness and mercy of God, He allows us to do these things. And so what we see here are some pretty nasty people here as far as their sins and their thoughts, but yet God used them mightily. That is in no way an excuse to live any way you want to live and think God's going to bless you, because God uses clean vessels. That's right. And by clean vessels, you keep short accounts with God. You fight sin every day of your life. So what we have here then is, now, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. There's a lineage here we're getting through. Ultimately, we'll see Joseph, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. Joseph is probably the greatest type of the Lord Jesus Christ in the Old Testament, and we're going to see how he fits into the picture eventually through our studies. But right now, what we have here is Isaac is old, he's blind, he wants to bless his son. He has a favorite son, and he wants to bless that son with the blessing, the traditional blessing of he's the eldest son. He should have had the birthright, but we saw how Jacob stole that birthright in a sense away from him when he was so hungry. Rather than his brother feeding him, his brother said, give me your birthright and then I'll give you some food. And Esau said, well, hey, what good is a birthright if I'm about to die? Give me the food, you can have the birthright. Well, it comes back to bite. And we're going to see a lot of times your sin, we're going to see this very clearly, your sin will find you out. You reap what you sow. And any other thing that I can think of that tells us what you do now, the checks that you're writing now are going to have to be cashed down the line. Amen. And so the best thing to do is don't write bad checks. Amen. Write the good checks. That way when they're cashed, there's the blessing. You write the bad checks and the payment's going to be required. So with that, let's pick this up. Isaac is old. He's blind. He wants to bless his son. He's got a favorite son, Esau. Rebekah's got a favorite son, Jacob. Now, both of these sons are not, choir boys. And we're going to see here that Jacob means supplanter. He's a little bit he's a con man. He's a cheat. He's a liar. We're going to see very clearly here. Esau's not much better, but Rebekah hears her husband Isaac say, go out, get some venison, kill it, bring it in here, let me have a fantastic dinner, and then after I have this dinner, I will bless you, speaking to Esau. And Rebekah overhears this. It seems like these women overhear a lot when their husbands talk. Verse 6, Genesis chapter 27, verse 6. And Rebekah spake unto Jacob her son, saying, Behold, I heard thy father speak unto Esau thy brother, saying, Bring me venison, and make me savory meat, that I may eat and bless thee before the Lord before my death. Now here's something. These blessings and stuff, it's so frustrating to me because I'm not as connected to tradition and things like that as I should be. But as I mentioned before, these things are extremely important. The father is going to put the blessing of God on the firstborn son. That stuff is so significant in this culture here that, as I've said before, I'm afraid we miss so much of the Bible because we don't understand and grasp how significant symbolism is with God and in the Bible. But this is a very, very, very big deal for the father to put the blessing of God upon the child. In this case, the child could be 30, 40, 50 years old. But verse 8, Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Verse 7, Bring me venison, and make me savory meat, that I may eat and bless thee before the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command thee. Go now to the flock and fetch me. Now, here's Rebekah is saying, I better divide this up a little bit. Isaac said, here's what you do. Go get the venison, go kill the deer, bring in the meat, and cook a dinner, and I'll eat it and bless you. Now, Rebekah hears this stuff. She brings her son in and says, look, I just heard what's going on. Now, because of what's going on here, I want you to do something, Jacob. Verse 8, Now therefore, my son, obey my voice according to that which I command thee. Go now to the flock and fetch me from thence 2 good kids of the goats, and I will make them savory meat for thy father, such as he loveth. So Rebekah is telling Jacob, you go to the flock, get a couple of goats, bring them in here. I'll cook these things up. I'll make it exactly the way your father loves it. You take it in there and tell him you're Esau, and he will bless you. This is what's going on here. Rebekah is trying to get her favorite son into the father to get the blessing before the older son gets it. Now, is all this stuff necessary? It's not necessary according to Genesis chapter 25. Let's keep your hand right there. Let's turn back to Genesis 25. What we have here is another case of someone trying to help God out. God told Rebekah that Jacob was going to get the blessing, that Jacob was going to be the ruler, that Jacob was going to be the one that he was going to use. God told Rebekah that. And here she's trying to help God out. Look in Genesis chapter 25, verse 23. And the Lord said unto her, unto Rebekah, and the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people. Esau was much stronger than Jacob. The one shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. So right there in that prophecy, God told Rebekah that Esau would be a servant to Jacob. So all she had to do was just let the natural course go, and things would be fine. But she, just like so many sinners, gets in there, helps God out, starts to lie and cheat and connive because she wants this to take place. The problem was, God said it was going to take place. And if it flowed the way it was supposed to flow, he would have been, Jacob would have got the blessing anyway, but she couldn't wait on God. That's mostly our problem. We help God out. God says something, but God's got his timetable. We've got ours. The problem is ours is never his. And so often we mess up because we help God out. You know, I'm going to hurry this thing along here. You know, Isaac's going to do this blessing, but God said you're going to, so I'm going to help God out here. Never help God out. If God says something, just simply believe it and wait on the Lord. Now, what happens here is she does this cooking. Verse 10, back to Genesis chapter 27. Verse 10, and thou shalt bring it to thy father, the food that she's going to make. Verse 10, and thou shalt bring it to thy father, that he may eat, and that he may bless thee before his death. And Jacob said unto Rebekah, his mother, behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am smooth. We talked about that a little bit last week. The 2 brothers were twins, but they sure didn't look anything alike. I don't know what that's called. There's 2 kinds of twins. Isn't there identical twins and something else? Which kind? Paternal? Is that what it is? That's the fraternal. I know it's got an ernal in it. Fraternal, but they don't look alike. They don't. And these 2 brothers did not look alike. One was a very hairy, macho beast, and the other was maybe bordered on effeminate. You know, and what we have here is Jacob says, "Hey, got a problem, Mom." You know, Dad might be blind, but he's not stupid. You know, and we might even question that as we go through here in a few minutes. What happens here is he brings up a problem. Look, I'm as smooth as a new baby's rear end. You know, verse 11. And Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver. There's no seeming to it. He is a deceiver. You know, my father's going to maybe accidentally feel me or something and find out I'm smooth, I'm not hairy. He's going to spot me right away. Verse 12 again. My father peradventure will feel me, and I shall seem to him as a deceiver, and I shall bring a curse upon me, and not a blessing. Verse 13. And his mother said unto him, upon me be thy curse, my son. Only obey my voice and go fetch me them. You know, let me take the heat here, son. You do what I tell you to do here. I'll take the heat later. And she took the heat later. Verse 14. And he went and fetched and brought them to his mother, the goats. And he went and fetched and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory meat such as his father loved. And Rebekah, here's the kind of the funny part here, right? If you try to visualize things, this next part is almost hilarious. I tried to picture this. Verse 14. And he went and fetched and brought them to his mother, and his mother made savory meat such as his father loved. And Rebekah took goodly raiment of her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them upon Jacob her younger son. So Rebekah says, we're going to go all out on this thing. You know, we're going to do everything possible to convince your father that you're Esau. I'm going to take his clothes. You know, she went in and grabbed his clothes. And we're going to see here that he was a man of the field, so he probably smelled like a goat. You know, I don't think they had deodorant and, you know, really nice showers and things back then, and I don't think Esau cared at all for that anyway. He just loved being out in the field, and so we're going to see here that you know, he smelled like a field. Now, I've been in some fields. I've been in some cattle fields. I've been in some dairy farms. I had a delivery at a dairy farm up in Erie, Michigan, or not Erie, starts with an M, something up across the line up there. Morenci, is it Morenci? Is Michigan? Morenci, Michigan. And I would hate to go there because usually I'd have a delivery in the morning. And you've got hundreds of cows there. And when I go there, I make my delivery into this place. And when I come out of there, you know, my truck is covered with whatever I run over there. I'm covered with that stuff. I smell like that the rest of the day. And I've got to go to other customers. You know, and I imagine they got, man, you know, call Vesco and tell them, man, tell your guy to take a shower. You know, I just smell like a cow the rest of the day. So Esau, I imagine, smelled just outdoorsy. You know, no high karate or anything on him. Do they still have that, or am I showing my age? Verse 16. I think I might have a thing of that at home in the drawer with all the other stuff I don't use.
High karate.
Yeah, the cologne. Yeah. Yeah. Verse 16. And she put this, well, let me read verse 15 again. And Rebekah took goodly raiment of her eldest son Esau, which were with her in the house, and put them upon Jacob her son. And this is the funny part. And she put the skins of the kids of the goats upon his hands and upon the smooth of his neck. So somehow, after she butchered the goats, she took the skin of the goat and somehow wrapped it on his hands. Maybe she sewed them on or something like that, just like a werewolf type thing. And on his, probably on his head, it says on the back of his neck. So on his head and his neck was this, I'm sure it wasn't dry yet. It probably still was oozing from the fluids and stuff that are on the inside of the skin. I mean, which probably just added to the flavor. So that just guaranteed more that the father would think, I can smell my son a mile off. This is him, Now, I've had that problem with my son, and I try, it's not fun. Now, Esau, he didn't seem to mind it. Isaac didn't seem to mind it. I hate it when I got to tell my son, hey, son, do something. And that's as an adult. Verse 16, and she put the skins of the kids of the goats upon his hands and upon the smooth of his neck, and she gave the savory meat and bread which she had prepared into the hand of her son Jacob. Okay, verse 18. Now, verse 18, you're going to see kind of a violation of Romans 14. In Romans 14, it says, if you eat, he that eateth and doubteth is damned. Romans chapter 14. And we're going to see here that Isaac actually doubts this whole thing. So he's not entirely stupid or senile. He thinks something's wrong, but he's not sure, and he continues on. He doubted. If we doubt something, that should be a red flag for us to maybe get down on our knees and say, Lord, I've got some doubt here. I've got some questions on this thing. I see red flags. What do I do? Isaac didn't do that. He was too busy wanting to fill his belly. He's got food there. He doesn't really have time to get down on his knees when he doubts and prays and asks God to show him if what's going on is real. So, he gave into his fleshly lust, the food, rather than being spiritual and dropping on his knees and asking God to protect him and what's going on. Verse 18, and he came unto his father and said, my father, and he said unto him, and I better put the words that are in there. Verse 18. And he came unto his father and said, my father, and he said, here am I. Who art thou, my son? And Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau, thy firstborn. I have done according as thou badest me. Arise, I pray thee, sit and eat my venison, that thy soul may bless me. And Isaac said unto his son, how is it that thou hast found it so quickly, my son? And he said, because the Lord thy God brought it to me. And Isaac said unto Jacob, come near, I pray thee, that I may feel thee, my son, whether thou be my very son Esau or not. And Jacob went near unto Isaac his father, and he felt him, and said, the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he discerned him not, because his hands were hairy, as his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. A note right here, Isaac went by feelings. Don't go by feelings. Isaac was led astray by his feelings here. He felt his son. Oh, this is Esau. Don't go by feelings, go by facts. Verse 23. And he discerned him not because his hands were hairy as his brother Esau's hands, so he blessed him. And he said, Art thou my very son Esau? And he said, I am. And he said, Bring it near to me that I may eat my son's venison, that my soul may bless thee. And he brought it near him, and he did eat, and he brought him wine, and he drank. And his father Isaac said unto him, Come near now, and kiss me, my son. And he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment, and blessed him, and said, See, the smell of my son is as the smell of a field, which the Lord hath blessed. I don't see how that's a compliment, but he was convinced. At this point, he was kind of convinced that it was that it was his son Esau. And the blessing follows, 28 and 29. The blessing follows. This is a continuation from the blessing of Abraham. God blessed Abraham. Abraham blessed Isaac, and Isaac here is blessing his son. They're carrying the blessing down the line. The blessing is this: Therefore, God give thee of the dew of heaven and of the fatness of the earth and plenty of corn and wine. Let people serve thee and nations bow down to thee. Be Lord over thy brethren, and let thy mother's sons bow down to thee. Cursed be every one that curseth thee, and blessed be he that blessed thee. Now, let's take a look at this. We're going to see here that Isaac asked some questions. He was in doubt. In verse 18, Isaac says, as you see there, the latter part of that, Who art thou? He wasn't sure. He was a little confused. Now, let me make this last week, week and a half, whatever it's been, we moved. And my one granddaughter, Jessica, stayed home from school to help us. So she apparently she didn't miss a whole lot of days, and she could stay home, and she would be with Chris and helping her. Well, I was at one spot, and I wanted to call them, so I called the phone Jen, which I thought they had over at the house. I don't know numbers. It's just Jen or Mom's cell or something like that. So I hit Jen because I knew that was one of my daughter's phone numbers. And the phone was picked up at the other end. And I said, well, how's it going? I'm home from school. I said, well, why are you home from school? Well, I was sick today, and Mom said I could stay home. And what I thought I was talking to Jessica, and I'm thinking, you liar, you little liar, I know why you stayed home. And so I was pursuing it to see just how many lies she was going to tell me. And then I was going to nail her, don't you lie to me like this, and so I kept asking, I just don't feel good. Mom said I could stay home. And I was just about to say, you stinking liar, I know why you're home. And then I somehow it connected that I was talking to Corey. I thought I was talking to Jennifer. I was talking to my grandson Corey, who had this inflamed toe, so he was telling the truth. I thought I was talking to her, but it was him. And then a few days later, Chris and I were at home, and we got a phone call from the school to come in. One of the kids is sick, and Chris talked to them at school, and she hung up and she said, we got to go to school. Jessica's sick. We got to pick her up. And so we went over to the school, and she went in. I sat out in the car. She went in. She came out with Corey. And I said, is he sick too? She said, no, he was the one that was sick. She thought she was talking to Jessica when it was Corey. Now, Corey's going to have to get to that point where his voice gets deeper. Or there could be problems. But so you can see where you're thinking you're talking to somebody. We both thought we were talking to Jessica at different times when we were talking to Corey. So we can see there's some illustration, or some confusion here. I was convinced I was talking to Jessica. She was convinced she was talking to Jessica. But anyway, verse 18, we see here that Isaac is a little bit concerned about what's going on. He's not sure, so he says, Who art thou, my son? Now let's go to verse 20. Another question he has. How is it that thou hast found it so quickly? How'd you get this venison so quickly, my son? Verse 21, at the end of it, he says, I pray thee that I may feel thee, my son, whether thou be my very son or not. So 3 times so far he's questioned if this is really Esau. Now go down to verse 24. And he said, Art thou my very son Esau? This is like the 4th time. Verse 27 is the 5th time. it says there, and he came near and kissed him, and he smelled the smell of his raiment. So like 5 times, Isaac in his mind questioned whether Esau, or whether this was Esau. So we see he doubted. He doubted. If we doubt, we stop where we're doubting and make sure before we go on. Now, let's take a look at the son. What a sweet guy this is. One thing I can't stand is lying. And if someone's lying to me, I usually, like I did with my granddaughter, I kind of pursue it to see how far it goes. And then, once the line is all the way out, put the hook in and nail them. But here we have Jacob lying like a dog to his father. His blind father, who thought he may have been on his deathbed, which he wasn't. He lived many years after that. And so he's going to lie to his father to get a blessing, to steal a blessing that should go to his brother. How's that for a kid? Wow. What are we looking at here? Verse 19. And Jacob said unto his father, I am Esau. There's a lie right there clearly. He's lying clearly to his father. I am Esau. The second thing he lies about is, I have done according as thou badest me. He didn't badest him, whatever badest is. He didn't badest him to go out. He didn't ask him to go out. He didn't tell him to go out and get the venison. He told Esau to go out. So right here he's lying. I am Esau. Oh, I'm doing exactly what you told me to do, Dad. Verse 20, when Isaac says, how did you get this venison so quick? Look what he did here in verse 20, the latter part of that. Because the Lord thy God brought it to me. Here he's standing there in front of his father, who's blind, and he's lying to him, and now he brings God into it and says, oh, God blessed me and gave me this right away. That's kind of bold. It shows he's got no fear or respect for his father. He's got no fear or respect for God at this point. He's just lying through his teeth. Now, look at verse 24. Isaac here says, and he said, art thou my very son Esau? And he said, I am. He had no problem lying to his father. We've got to watch it. Kids lie. Adults lie. It's rough to get, it's hard, you don't know who to trust. And it's rough at sometimes when you want somebody to trust and you don't know who to trust. Well, this whole thing took place here. And in verse 28 and 29, he got the blessing. Now, here's what I don't understand. I mean, maybe I don't understand history or something like this, but, I just blessed my son and gave him the blessing of God upon him, and it was my son who just lied to me and cheated his brother. Now, what I would have did is went out, found Jacob, knocked the stuffings out of him, and said, that stuff doesn't count. You lied, you cheated. I'm going to do this to the right one. But that's not how things worked back then. When a blessing was given, especially the blessing of God, in verse 28 says, therefore God give thee the dew of heaven. Whoever he was speaking to, that's where that blessing went, and it wasn't transferable. It went there. Esau could not get the blessing back. So what happened was he got the blessing, he snuck out real quick before his brother got back in there, because he knew his brother would kill him if he saw him there. So verse 30. And it came to pass, as soon as Isaac had made an end of blessing Jacob, and Jacob was yet scarce gone out of the presence of Isaac, he just made it out of the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. And he also had made savory meat, and brought it unto his father, and said unto his father, let my father arise and eat of his son's venison, that thy soul may bless me. And Isaac his father said unto him, who art thou? And he said, I am thy son, thy firstborn Esau. And Isaac trembled very exceedingly. It shook Isaac to the core, because Isaac just knew that he gave that blessing that was to go to his first son to someone else. Verse 33, and Isaac trembled very exceedingly and said, I slow up here. And Isaac trembled very exceedingly and said, who? Who are you? Say that again. You're saying that you're Esau? Verse 33, and Isaac trembled very exceedingly and said, who Where is he that hath taken venison and brought it to me? And I have eaten of all before thou camest, and have blessed him, yea, and he shall be blessed. It can't be changed. He shall be, verse 34. And Esau heard the words of his father. He cried with a great and exceeding bitter cry, and said unto his father, Bless me, even me also, my father. And he said, Thy brother came with subtlety, and hath taken thy blessing away. Isaac realized that his son Jacob snuck in there and stole the blessing, but there was nothing he could do about it. Now, very quickly, so that we finish this out, what happens here is obviously Esau gets very angry. And look in verse 41. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith let me try it again, verse 41. And Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing wherewith his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, The days of mourning for my father are at hand, then will I slay my brother Jacob. What he's saying is, his father might have been sick at this point. His father didn't die at this point. His father thought he was going to die at this point, but he went on for many, many years. But Esau also was looking at his father, who may not be very well at this point. And he says the days of mourning for my father are at hand. In other words, my father's about to die. And then we will mourn his death. And as soon as we're done mourning the death of my father, I will kill my brother Jacob. I will kill him. And since Esau was a man of the field and had no problem with killing and had great accuracy with weapons, Jacob was as good as a dead man right here. But then again, Mama comes in, swoops in, protects her favorite son, and gets him out of town. Verse 42. And these words of Esau her elder son were told to Rebekah, and she sent and called Jacob her younger son, and said unto him, Behold, thy brother Esau, as touching thee, doth comfort himself, purposing to kill thee. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice, and arise, flee thou to Laban my brother to Haran, and tarry with him a few days until thy brother's fury turneth away. Now, what happens here is Rebekah hears what's going on in the plans, and she grabs her son and says, Look, you got to get out of town. What I'll do is I'll send you to my brother, something like 400 miles away or so. I will send you to my brother, and you spend a few days there with my brother until your brother calms down, till your brother cools off. Now, verse 44, what happens here is, and tarry with him a few days until thy brother's fury be turned away. That few days turns into 20 years. He's 20 years with Laban. And when he comes back, his mother's dead. So because of him and his mother lying and cheating and conniving, she lost 20 years with her favorite son, and he lost 20 years with her, and he never saw her again. Kind of a reaping what you sow there a little bit. Now, there's something that I wanted to point out here. Oops, I just ripped my Bible. In reaping what you sow, and what comes around goes around, that type of thing, isn't it kind of interesting here that Jacob, and we're going to see this as we go on down the line as far as we get to Jacob. Or Joseph rather, is when we get to Joseph, we're going to find out something. But Jacob here, we see in verse 16 of Genesis 27, verse 16, and she put the skins of the kids of the goats upon his hands and upon the smooth of his neck. What's kind of interesting here, when you reap what you sow, Jacob here has got these goats' skins upon him to cheat his father, to con his father, to bring, to trick his father. And so it's kind of interesting that Jacob has these goat skins. And let's turn to Genesis chapter 37. Genesis chapter 37. We're going to look a little bit in the future here. Genesis 37. Genesis chapter 37. In the future, Jacob has, of course, 12 children, and his favorite is Joseph, who gets sold into slavery and becomes the second in command in Egypt. But Jacob conned his father with goats, with skins of the goat, and it comes back to bite him later on. Look here in Genesis 37, verse 20. I'll start in verse 29. When Joseph is sold into slavery, his brothers take him and sell him into slavery. Jacob gets conned with a goat again. There's that goat that Jacob used to trick his father is being used here to trick him. Let's see this, verse 29. And Reuben returned to the pit, and behold, Joseph was not in the pit, and he rent his clothes. And he returned unto his brethren and said, the child is not, and I, whither shall I go? Look at verse 31. And they took Joseph's coat and killed the kid of the goats and dipped the coat in blood. They took a goat, dipped the coat in blood, and took it to Jacob and said, this is what's left of your son Joseph, your favorite son. Isn't that kind of interesting that years later, the thing that he used to trick his father came back to trick him? So there again, watch what you do. It always cycles. The best thing you can do is stay as close to the Lord as possible, live as holy a life as possible, be as decent a person as possible, and just pray that God would bless your efforts. Amen. And with that, I think it's time to close. So let's pray. Father,